For decades, the music industry was dominated by men. But in recent years, something has shifted, and not just a little. One of the biggest artists in the world right now is a woman, and not one who just shows up and fades away. With a touring schedule that's breaking records and a steady stream of albums released at a relentless pace, we're not just talking about someone who follows pop music, but someone who defines it. Ladies and gentlemen, Taylor Swift. Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of We're Only in It for the Music, a YouTube series that takes you through the musical universe, from ABBA to Zappa and everything in between and beyond. Click the like and subscribe buttons, and hit the notification bell so you'll never miss an episode. But enough of that, never mind the bollocks. We're only in it for the music. Hello everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of We're Only in It for the Music. Last week, we tried to unravel the mystery behind Losing My Religion by REM, a global mega hit, with a mandolin as its lead instrument. And we're staying in that folky atmosphere just a little longer, because today, we're putting two albums by Taylor Swift head-to-head. It's time for a new episode of Pick One, and this time, you get to choose between the two folk-inspired albums she wrote and released during the lockdown period. Two albums that are so closely connected, you could almost see them as a double album. In fact, I usually play them back to back, just to stay in that world and in that mood a little longer. But the game is called Pick One, so we're going to have to choose. To help you do that, I've broken both albums down and evaluated them across 4 categories: the songs, the sound and production, the sequencing, and the sleeve. The last 3 together form what I call the triple S factor.
It's a thing.
It's not a thing. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce the contenders: Folklore versus Evermore. The first time I heard Taylor Swift on the radio, I honestly thought it was a song by Avril Lavigne. To be fair, Love Story is just a strong, catchy pop song, the kind of track that's hard to criticize. So my first impression of Taylor was positive, but that's where it ended. In the years that followed, the hits kept coming. And even for someone who rarely listens to the radio by choice, you can't escape that. I could hear how well those songs were put together, how catchy they were. But it simply wasn't the kind of music I usually connect with. And that's fine. That's taste. The hater's gonna hate. And the player's gonna play. Right? Years later, something interesting happened. Ryan Adams released a full cover version of Taylor's album, 1989. And for the first time, I heard something different. Through his interpretations, it suddenly became clear. These songs are really well written, more than just pop for the masses. I was convinced of her talent, but still not a Swiftie. And her album Lover didn't really suggest a shift in direction either. It leaned heavily into polished synth pop, a sound that fit perfectly within her pop identity. By then, she had already moved away from her country music origins from her early records. Then came the lockdown. During the pandemic, I kept reading positive reviews of a new album, Folklore. So I gave it a listen, and that was the moment it clicked. The voice had always been pleasant, but now the music was different. Smaller, rougher, more organic, more space to breathe. No excess production, just songs that were allowed to exist. I found myself returning to the album more and more. It matched my state of mind, and maybe even the state of the world at that time. And before I knew it, I was in a world defined by serenity and melancholy. Not long after, the album Evermore followed. And together, those two albums represent, for me, the strongest work in her entire catalog, which makes it all the more striking that the rest of her discography, with a few single-song exceptions, does very little for me. After these two albums, I quietly hoped she would continue in this direction. But with Midnights, she returned to the polished pop production of Before, which is perfectly fine, just not where I live musically. And that's exactly what makes this comparison interesting. Because within a fairly extensive body of work, these are the only two albums that truly resonate with me. They form an island within her discography. So if I have to choose just one, which one will it be? Round 1. the music. This channel wouldn't be called We're Only in It for the Music if we didn't always put the music first. I gave both albums, Folklore and Evermore, a focused listen and rated each song individually on a scale from 0 to 10. Not a single track scored below a 7. That's how solid these albums are. Folklore lands on an average of 8.4. The standout track for me is the song called 7, a song that draws you in from the very first seconds. Dreamlike, cinematic, like watching an old 8mm film from a distant past. Back to the innocence of childhood, when everything was still open, when everything still felt possible. Beautifully restrained vocals. A track made for repeated listening. A completely different but equally powerful highlight is Peace. A pulsing beat, a hypnotic bass line, an arrangement built almost entirely out of space. And that space is exactly where its strength lies. Would it be enough if I could never give you peace? Not a typical love song, but a fundamental question. Honest, mature, almost confronting. And I may not be a Swiftie, but this hits. What stands out about Folklore is its consistency. The quality remains high throughout. Evermore follows closely with an average of 8.3, just a tenth of a point difference. That's how close these albums are. Where Folklore excels in consistency, Evermore is more unpredictable. Higher peaks, but also a bit more variation in quality. One of the highlights is the song Happiness, a stripped-down piano ballad that shows just how strong Taylor's songwriting really is, without any embellishment. No overproduction, no distraction, just a voice and a piano, and that's enough. Coney Island, the duet with The National, is another standout, a melancholic track about doubt, regret, and a relationship that has fallen apart. What exactly happened is never explained. And that's precisely what makes it such a strong song. You fill in the blanks yourself. And that may be the key difference between these two albums. Folklore is more consistent. Evermore may reach higher peaks, but also dips a little further. And because of that, Folklore takes the lead in round 1. The score after round 1, 1-0 for Folklore. Round 2, sound and production. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of Taylor Swift's work sounds a bit too polished for my taste. But with Folklore and Evermore, there's a clear shift in direction. Both albums were produced by Aaron Dessner of The National and Jack Antonoff, known for his work with artists like Lana Del Rey, St. Vincent, and Florence and the Machine. And you can hear it. The sound of both albums is organic, intimate, and warm, but there is a clear difference in approach. Folklore feels like a complete whole, a continuous listening experience without sharp edges, like the soundtrack to the last warm days of late summer. Evermore builds on that, but also lets go of it. There's more variation, more movement. At times, it deliberately breaks away from that established atmosphere, and maybe this is the best way to describe it. Folklore is the Indian summer. Evermore is autumn. The warmth gives way to cooler air, to darker colors, to more contrast. And because of that, Evermore feels richer, but Folklore feels more cohesive. So when it comes to sound and production, these two albums end up side by side. No winner this round. The score, 2-1 for Folklore. Round 3, sequencing. Both albums are carefully constructed and unfold like soundtracks for the changing seasons. The falling of leaves is never far away. What stands out is the runtime. Both albums run over an hour, but never feel too long. Where many albums of this length would benefit from trimming, that's simply not the case here. There are no weak tracks. The atmosphere is so inviting, you just drift into it. Time stops mattering. You can easily get lost in the music, in the mood. But again, there's a difference in how these albums unfold. Folklore flows, from beginning to end, a constant atmosphere that holds your attention. Evermore takes a different approach, more dynamics, more contrast, more variation. It keeps you more alert as a listener. And where Folklore keeps you in one continuous mood, Evermore feels more like shifting weather. And that added dynamic makes the difference here. This round goes to Evermore. The score, 2-2. Round 4, sleeve. The so-called triple S factor.
It's a thing.
It's not a thing. Even though we're here for the music, the visual aspect still matters. Presentation is part of the experience. Don't judge a book by its cover, but a strong cover definitely enhances an album. The cover of Folklore exists in multiple variations, 8 in total. Artistically interesting, but it also leans a bit toward commercial collectability. So, to keep things fair, I'm focusing on the original In the Trees version, a minimal black and white image. Taylor, small within a vast forest. You observe from a distance, and that perfectly matches the atmosphere of the album, like the soundtrack for a walk in the woods. Evermore takes a different approach. Warmer, closer, a rear-facing portrait, the braid, the coat. You're no longer observing from afar. You're standing right there with her. More intimacy, less mystery, and just like in the music, the difference lies in approach, distance versus proximity. And in this category, Folklore takes it by a hair. That brings the score to 3-2 for Folklore. The final. To determine the final result, we need to take a quick look at how this system actually works. Total score divided by the number of songs gives the average. Number of songs times that average, plus the triple S factor, gives the subtotal. And that subtotal divided by the number of components gives the final score. Simple, clear, completely foolproof. And after all that calculation, both albums end up with exactly the same score. 10.6 versus 10.6. So yes, you build an entire scoring system and still end up with 2 winners. Not ideal. The triple S factor. It's a thing, but apparently not enough, because this is called pick 1, not pick 2, or pick both. So there's only one thing left to do. We move to the final question. If I could only take one album with me to a desert island, which one would it be? Letting your inner gut feeling decide. So, if I really have to choose just one, which album stays? Evermore is richer, more varied, maybe even more interesting from moment to moment. But Folklore is the album I keep coming back to. It holds me, from beginning to end, without letting go. Maybe because it feels like those last warm days, just before everything changes. And if I have to take just one with me, then my pick is Folklore. And that was pick 1. That was Taylor Swift. If you had to choose just one of these 2 albums, which one would it be? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to join in via the poll in the community tab here on the channel, so you can play along. You can listen to the highlights from both Folklore and Evermore in the Spotify playlist featuring all the music from the series. Follow the channel on social media, Facebook and Instagram for updates, because I will follow you if you follow me. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Thanks for watching. See you next time. And in the meantime, drop the needle, press play, and remember, we're only in it for the music. But before we move on, we're heading somewhere else first, to the start of something new, to an artist who reinvented himself time and time again, and maybe understood better than anyone else. That music can be more than just music. See you next time.